meeting will be called, oh, not yet? Okay. All right. Oh, hi. This meeting will be called to order. This meeting has been posted in compliance with the open meeting law.
Will you speak in your mic, please?
This meeting has been posted in compliance with the open meeting law. If all members are present, a quorum is present. So we're all here, so we have a quorum. Thank you. Now we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now we move into public comment. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. Each person has up to 5 minutes to speak on a specific agenda item. Members of the public may participate in the meeting without being physically present by one of the following methods. And we do have a place to call in, and that is 702-589-9629. And we'll see if we have any public comments. I wanted you to notice that we do have a new intro. If you're watching the live television, we do have a new intro, so you can thank the staff here at the city for that wonderful intro. Okay, hearing no public comment at this time, then we'll move on, and we're going to address our first item. Excuse me? Oh, we do have some members in the audience. Did you have comments? No? Okay. All right, then we'll move on. For possible action, approval of the minutes of the June 23rd, 2021 regular meeting.
Making a motion to accept the minutes as printed.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried, and the minutes will be placed on file. For possible action, updated review and recommendation on the RDA Historic Preservation Grant application for 524 Nevada Way.
Hi, good evening. Rafi Festichian, City's Economic Development Coordinator. Grant and Larry Turner have submitted a new application with no changes from the prior version for their property located in the Historic District at 524 Nevada Way. The HPC conducted a special meeting on April 12th to evaluate this application. The HPC recommended approval of the grant application, noting not all work would be eligible for grant funding based on the city's historic preservation consultant, Courtney Mooney. Ms. Mooney provided an updated determination regarding proposed work to be completed as part of the RDA Historic Preservation Grant Program application process. This is contained in your packet. The Redevelopment Agency reviewed this application for consideration on April 27 and denied the application by a 3-2 vote. On the dais, there is a sheet of the activities by line item highlighting which items are eligible per Ms. Mooney's evaluation. Staff requests HBC review and discussion regarding the applicant's grant request. Please refer to the specific line item number with your motion. The HBC can make a motion to recommend to the RDA agency which proposed improvements meet the Secretary of Interior's standards and items eligible for the grant program. Grant and Larry Turner are here in attendance if there are any specific questions regarding the project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, any comments?
I'd like to start with a motion, and maybe that'll lead to a conversation or comments. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
So even though the proposed modification to the property's front facade, 1, does not comply with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, and 2, adversely affects the qualities that make the building eligible for inclusion in the National Register, and 3, will result in, excuse me, a significant loss in architectural integrity whereby the building no longer is considered a contributing resource of the Boulder City Historic District. The committee recommends approval of eligible work listed on the 8/15, if that's the correct date, RDA eligibility list, as long as the work complies with SOI or Secretary of Interior standards, as recommended in the April 14th, 2021 letter from Courtney Mooney, Northwind Resource Consulting, to Michael Mays.
Okay, is there a second? Oh, that one right there, yeah, there you go.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all right, then we can open up for discussion.
I'll say something. I mean, this is the third time this has come before the Historic Preservation Committee, and every time the Historic Preservation Committee has done the same thing, and I don't see any reason to do anything different now. So,
Just like to say that nothing has changed for me. I agree too that those items that are eligible and comply with the standards should be approved, but ultimately it's for the council to decide again, I guess.
As Charlie said, we've gone over it three different times, and it's been the same result, so.
Okay, all right, so, any more discussion? It looks like we're all in favor of seeing this go through, so do you need any other motions?
A motion's been made, so you can call for the vote.
Okay,
Your microphone, please.
okay, all right, then we'll go ahead and call for the vote, and we'll start with Blair.
I made the motion.
Okay, we can start with Ray. Go ahead.
Well, Madam Chair, you can just do the voice vote as normal. All
Oh,
in favor,
okay.
say aye.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any nay votes? Okay, then the motion is passed.
And Blair, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
You're welcome. Okay, we're going to move on then to agenda item 2. Updated review and recommendation on an RDA historic preservation grant. I'm sorry, we just did that. I need to check that off.
check that.
Yeah, number 3. Okay, update on implementation of the committee's goals and priorities.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As usual, you have in your packet the list of the committee's goals, and you will see progress reports highlighted in bold. The one thing that's not reflected in here, because it occurred last night, the City Council approved the historic preservation plan that came before the committee. And so we'll be working to finalize that and publish it and put it on the city's website. Again, this is a guiding document for moving forward with action items related to historic preservation efforts within the community. And so perhaps we can, at the next meeting, as a point of discussion, look to see how that matches with your committee goals and modify your goals accordingly. Because as you know, in that historic preservation plan, it has 14 action items with timelines of priorities and how and when they should be completed. And so that could be a good discussion with the committee to align your goals with the historic preservation plan.
Okay, all right, thank you
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
In addition to that, you will note that we are beginning to work on the Historic Preservation Grant Program. You recall, City Council with the fiscal year 22 budget approved $100,000 for the incentivizing homeowners within the historic district to make improvements that follow the Secretary of Interior's standards. As you know, just with the historic preservation grant you just recommended approval for in the last agenda item, that really, because it's RDA only, covers incentives for the commercial properties. This grant program will be targeted toward the residential properties within the district. So staff will be working on a draft guideline and bringing that to the committee for your input and review, and then taking it to the council for final approval. And then, as it relates to ordinance updates, as you know, in June, the Historic Preservation Ordinance Ad Hoc Committee hosted 2 open house meetings to answer questions regarding the proposed ordinance that was created by the ad hoc committee, and received input on that. What we're waiting on is SHPO to respond with their comments on the draft ordinance. Once those comments are received, we will reconvene the Historic Preservation Ordinance Ad Hoc Committee so that they can take in the public comments as well as the SHPO comments, and then provide staff direction on their ultimate recommendation on how to proceed with the draft ordinance.
Oh, okay, all right, very good. Thank you for putting us up to date to today. Sure, go right ahead.
Michael, so those public comments, are they something that we are going to have to wait till SHPO gets back with their take on them, or will we be provided with those comments ahead of that? Or do we have to wait? Do we already have them?
Yeah.
So we've got everything.
They were provided to the committee
Okay.
previously.
All right, thanks.
Okay, all right. Oh, you have a comment? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, which comments were provided to the committee?
The public comments made at the 2 open houses.
Were those provided to the SHPO?
I'd have to check to see if they were provided to SHPO.
Yeah, because I didn't see him in our packet.
It was a previous packet.
Oh, was it from last month?
Well,
Yeah.
with all packets, SHPO is provided a link to the packet so that they are able to review all the material that comes before the Historic Preservation Committee.
Okay,
And then I have a second
yeah, go ahead.
comment. This is for item number 8, identify historic buildings. In the CIP dated May 25th, it states that preservation work would be $500,000 and the historic structure report would be $125,000. And that the fund source would be from the historic preservation grant. I'm confused how the CIP works. Is that $700K total for 500 plus 125?
It was
How is
in,
it allocated?
sure. So it was anticipating, because of This particular grant, it's a reimbursable grant. So the city would have to upfront pay the $500,000 for the improvements and get reimbursement for that portion through this grant application. And likely what's going to occur is the city's going to proceed with the study first so that the study is complete in time for the eventual grant application for the improvements, proposed improvements to the water filtration plant.
And at a city council meeting in the budget discussion, it talks about the $125K being, I guess, allocated or directed within the redevelopment district budget.
Correct.
Does that mean that we do not need to wait for the SHPO funds for that? And is the city going to go ahead and fund that?
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting, is that because of the likely timing for when that grant will become available, it presents the opportunity to proceed with the RDA funds to pay for the study. We wouldn't be seeking reimbursement for that. We'd be seeking reimbursement for the actual improvements.
So given that it's currently fiscal year '22, is there a RFI or RFQ going out yet for that HSR, or where are we in the process of funding and contracting for that work?
Yeah, I'm going to be speaking with our purchasing manager about how to proceed with that. It's under the threshold of what is required for city council approval for funds, but I think we're going to be looking to the consultants that do that type of work and prepare at least a couple of estimates and how that would be completed.
So it's already been approved by the city council, so you don't have to go back to them for that $125K approval, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, because they approved it in the fiscal year '22 budget.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
okay. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
I have a question too about
Sure.
item 3. Well, it's not so much a question, I'm curious. One of the action items listed in 3 is complete appropriate city, state, and/or national register nomination forms for historic and cultural places. And I looked at the state historic preservation, what is it, the register. And there's only 2 items listed in the state historic register for Boulder City. One of them is the hospital. Actually, there's two the hospital's noted twice. One of them is the hospital and one of them is the old hospital. And of course, that no longer exists. The other one, of course, is the Boulder Dam Hotel. But I'm curious whether we should be doing something to list Boulder City eligible buildings or sites or whatever on the state Register of Historic Places, because apparently we've never done that. We being the Historic Preservation Committee or the city. But we do have that as an action item, but I don't know that any action has been taken on that item. I'm curious. And it also applies to the National Register. I mean, Mooney, I think, has identified 62 or 63 buildings within the Boulder City Historic District that are eligible for individual listing on the National Register of Historic Places. And I just wonder what we need to do to begin that process on that action item. What can we do? What should be done? How do we proceed with that? Because it doesn't show up anywhere in updates and so on. I mean, it's just there as an action item and no action taken. So can you just comment, Michael, what's the response to that?
Well, this is where the goals, it's the monthly opportunity for the committee in looking at the goals to highlight priorities for staff and for the city's consultant to focus on. And so when we bring this back next month and you're looking at the Historic Preservation Plan action items relative to your goals here, it's an opportunity to reprioritize the areas of focus. And that's where myself and Historic Preservation Consultant and utilization of those resources can respond to those priorities. You'll see with action item 4, that's the other aspect of this, that the city has gone through a RFP process. We had 4 consultants respond to the city's RFP for historic preservation consultant, and Northwind Consulting was selected. And so we're in the process of finalizing a contract with them. And once we get that contract finalized, then that's an opportunity through your priorities to direct staff and the consultant to work on those items.
All right. So we can put that if we choose then for a possible agenda item.
It'll be in our goals and priorities for the future.
In goals and priorities for the future.
Right.
To discuss that. Okay, that's fine. I just am curious where that stands. That's all right. So, thank you.
Okay,
Hold
any
on.
other comments before I comment? Go ahead, Claire.
So regarding Courtney as the consultant, will she be available for our meetings? Is it only per project or just an update on what she's working on, or is she taking the role of a historic preservation officer, sort of, kind of?
She's going to certainly be providing us the expertise and knowledge as a historic preservation officer. But the city approved a budget of $50,000 for the year, and so it will be a conversation with this committee as to prioritization of resources and time for the historic preservation consultant. Certainly, one of the roles and responsibilities is going to be when we have additional RDA grants for her to review that grant application and whether it meets the Secretary of Interior standards. We will be also utilizing her to help augment our review of any proposed building permit improvements within the district and their compliance with Secretary of Interior standards, and provide that to you as part of your review. So I guess to directly answer your question, it will be dependent on the task and the need to have her here in person to be able to engage the committee in that topic and assignment.
Okay, all right, very good. I did want to make a few comments about the matrix, and I want to thank Mr. Mays again for his work on this. It's been very valuable to guide us, and as you notice, we are coming to a completion of our goals. So I want to go back, and I've highlighted some of the things that we've done so that we can remind ourselves of what has been done. Okay, on objective 3, explore creating new historic preservation districts in Boulder City. We conducted a citywide reconnaissance and intensive survey to identify historic and cultural places that are historically significant. And SHPO did approve this study. We want to make note that the city received SHPO reimbursement of $33,000 CLG grant, and that came through in August 5th, I'm sorry. So that's just been recently come through. And I want to remind you that it was the previous city manager that recommended that we go the CLG route. And I think that was valuable information. And we did go with his leadership. And we have been reimbursed for that grant there. Okay, and then moving on, we want to look at number 4, amend existing codes and programs to achieve historic preservation goals and to comply with the CLG and SOI standards. The city conducted the RFP to select historic preservation consultant in August. Northwind Consulting was selected, and Mr. Mays just told us that again, that the contract was finalized, and we will have access to Northwind to help us kind of give interpretation for some of this.
And to comply with the CLG.
Okay, number 5, identify financial incentives to promote historic preservation. The city council approved on 5/25, $100,000 for a new grant program to incentivize homeowners in historic district to restore homes. And staff is working on developing guidelines, and Mr. Mays just told us that this evening again, that those guidelines are being developed. So that's a really plus, that the homeowners are going to be able to access this money for their own restoration of their historical homes. Number 6, promote economic development through historic preservation. The NPF has indicated that a heritage tourism assessment plan would need to be a separate project. And I did want to ask you, Mr. Mays, about that, the heritage tourism assessment plan.
Yeah, so that was part of the original scope of the Nevada Preservation Foundation, and as I had previously reported, we were waiting on them to finalize that study. They eventually came back to us and said they weren't able to do that, and so now that would need to be something that would need to be contracted and budgeted for separately.
Okay, so is that something that you're going to take up with the council, or?
It can be certainly one of the things that we include in the proposed fiscal year 23 budget for consideration.
Okay, good. So we should include that in our new matrix when we're developing our goals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, number 7, develop an educational campaign that promotes historic Boulder City and encourages historic preservation. Okay, staff will apply to SHPO for the next grant round. And this application evidently, according to this matrix, tells us that that will be made the 31st, 8/31, the next grant round.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, good. So we're right on target with that. Okay, and then number 8, and we're coming to the end of the matrix now. Identify historic buildings to repurpose and reuse as appropriate for a given area. Complete the Stantec study that evaluates city needs for city-owned historic buildings. I'm not clear about that, the Stantec study. Was that ever completed, or was that, well, can you tell us a little bit about that? The
Sure.
Stantec study?
The city had contracted with Stantec to do an assessment of all city-owned facilities, and there was a presentation before the Historic Reservation Committee regarding that. And what that accomplished was an assessment of buildings like the old airport hangar and other city properties and requirements that were needed to maintain those facilities.
Okay, and was that completed, that study, pretty much?
Pretty much, yes.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, then it says here on number 8, that a city council approved on 5/25 RDA funds in the amount of $125,000 for the historic filtration plant study and $300,000 for preservation. And staff is awaiting on SHPO grant announcement. I think we just discussed that. So this is a big deal to have this filtration plant going to be upgraded. And I want to thank the staff for following through and the guidance of the Historic Committee, because I know I know how much they've been involved and with this, and it's wonderful to see this all coming to fruition. And I think you'll notice too that we are on number 8, and Mr. Mays and Charlie just discussed some future goals, and we'll have to start looking at those new goals. So we're right on target. Okay, any other, anybody else want to say something?
Well, we might want to ask for an agenda item for our next meeting for proposals of goals by members. I know I have some in mind.
Okay.
I don't know if tonight's appropriate or not, or maybe we should just
I think we should,
schedule an item to bring forward some ideas and make some decisions on some new goals.
okay, all right. Can we do that then? Can we put that on the agenda for next time?
Right, that's what I was mentioning. So for next month, what we'll do is we'll have your goals, and we will have the Historic Preservation Plan goals, and it's an opportunity for the committee to reevaluate those. Now, with the Historic Preservation goals previously, this will be part of what you'll need to consider. That was advanced to the City Council and approved by the City Council. Last night, they just approved the goals in the Historic Preservation Plan. So any deviation from that you would incorporate into your goals, we would want to consistently send that to the council as well.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you very much. Okay, any other comments?
I do have a question. So, our goals have to be brought before the city council?
Your goals previously went to the city council and were considered by them, yes.
Okay. Considered or approved, did it need their approval?
Sometimes,
They had approved them, yes.
Okay.
yeah. Okay, all right, I think we're all up to date then. And I wanted to remind you that you all have done a considerable amount of work and thought, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate all of that. It's a very thoughtful group. Okay, we'll move on then to number 4. For possible action, discussion on public outreach utilizing local publications, city website, and social media.
I don't think it's for possible action.
Oh, it's just what it says here, that's what I'm reading. Okay, we have to say that in case there is action.
Well, it says that on the agenda.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah, it always says possible action in case we have to do it. Yeah. You're teasing over here.
All right, well, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay,
That's what it says, so. All right, Charlie.
so
Any comments on that? On public outreach? Evidently, according to the agenda items, there is some discussion. Member Davenport suggested that brief informational videos could be created to highlight positive projects in the city. And that was on 12/2/2020. Any further comments on that? Blair?
I think the comment is, or I have a question regarding, what we were going to do was create videos that tagged off of Historic Preservation Day. And, for the past 2 years, it's been a little weird, so
Yeah.
Ray's been great doing, creating videos, and he did do a video of our walking tour.
Yes,
so the
and did that get
question is-
posted? Did the walking tour get posted?
Did I send?
I don't know, you're supposed to send it. The walking tour, Susan gave permission.
It's not a preservation committee project.
Yeah, it's not.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
I couldn't give,
Oh.
I don't give permission, and B, it wasn't something that came through the committee.
Okay, so then it would have to be,
It is a good example of
okay, did you want to try to get that on
the
the,
types of things we could do, but we did conduct this tour and we made a video version of it, and
Yeah.
so we could come up with some ideas like that for the committee itself. certainly, but it's a good example of what we could do.
Okay, so that cannot be approved to go on the city's website, is that correct? Since it was a
We'd have,
personal project?
we'd have to see it first.
Yeah, okay,
I'll send it to you guys, see them
okay. I'd like to see it too. I'd like to see it too.
I'll send you all.
Okay, thanks.
Another suggestion is that it lives, I'm not sure where, but could the city provide a link to it if it's approved? It's not on the city's website, but there's a link to it, perhaps, I don't know.
Yeah, we can review it and make that determination.
Okay, okay, good. One thing that I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if this is the right time or if we need to put it on a separate agenda, but my thought was to have a video of all of the city buildings. For example, the LA Water and Power Building, the filtration plant, all of the buildings that the city owns currently. I'd like to see that put on the website so that when someone accesses historic preservation on the website, they can actually see which buildings we do own, the city does own. To me, that would be a really good video. Is that something we could work on? And I was talking with Holly a little bit about this, and she said she would be glad to put it together for the city if that was approved. Do I have to say that now, or can I put that on the agenda?
So, I mean, this is talking about public outreach. It's certainly something that we can explore.
Okay,
And I don't know how much work would be involved in that, so
okay,
that'd be something we need to discuss with our communications manager.
all right, okay. Well, do we need to put it on an agenda, or can we just talk about it right now?
This is related to public outreach and utilizing local publications, city website, and social media, so you can talk about it right now.
Okay to talk about it, okay, good. All right, well, my thought was to actually have all of those buildings listed, so, because I was trying to find, I was doing my own research. I was gonna write an article about one of the buildings downtown that was privately owned, a commercial building, and I couldn't find hardly any information on the city's website, and I was kind of disappointed. I thought we should have some information on every building that the city owns. And what would that all include? Like the LA Water and Power Building, the water filtration plant. What other buildings do we own that are historical? The airport.
Well, Madam Chair, you had mentioned a commercial building downtown, so that would be
That wasn't a city building.
Yeah.
How many city historic buildings do we own?
They're all in the guidelines that are on the website. There's a whole separate section of guidelines just for city-owned buildings. So when you go to our website and look up guidelines, the one for the city buildings is there.
Okay, I'd like to see a video of that made. Would that be possible to look into? If it doesn't require a lot of time.
So Linda, are you just, there's a list of buildings and then videos of what? People like giving a tour, talking about it, history of it?
Yeah.
Okay, so are you gonna be the person talking about it, or?
Not necessarily, I just
Okay,
thought,
that's
yeah.
I think you need to come up with like a script, if it's gonna be a video, some kind of a script, or an outline
Uh-huh.
for a video. Because, I mean, a video of just a building is, you could do a photograph of a building, that's a lot easier.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I
I'm not
wonder
sure what you're
if
talking about.
the city could just look into that and see what that would require.
Well, I guess, Madam Chair, we're looking for further clarification on what it is you would be looking for.
Yeah.
We have the list of the city-owned buildings. The Stantec study goes into great detail of each of the city-owned buildings, has photographs of them, and so that's available to the public as well. You're looking for what exactly?
Yeah, I was just thinking it just might be interesting to have like just a historic talk about each building. That was just my own thought. So, yeah, go ahead, Ray.
So, could we not just set up a subcommittee and identify the buildings that, you would be on that committee, of course, and identify the buildings that we feel, and we agree would be good to start a project on, and
Okay.
come up with a brief description of the building, its history, maybe some interesting old photographs, compare the past to today kind of thing, and just try and keep it as brief as possible, maybe a minute or two on each building,
Okay. All
But
right,
we'll need to set up a little committee or something to work on
Okay.
identifying it.
all right. Well, is that okay to set up a subcommittee then?
Let me double check with the clerk's office, because
Okay.
my recollection is that subcommittees are the same as committees, meaning you need to
Okay.
have agendas and posted meetings and minutes.
If we have two members of the committee,
Yeah, if it's,
That-
it's
it-
only two.
yeah, it's only
then-
two. But what I would suggest
Uh-huh.
is at the next meeting, we agendize that, the creation of that subcommittee. The Historic Preservation Committee votes on who those two members will be. And then you go off and do your work, and then you come back and report to the committee at a later point.
And we could discuss at that meeting which buildings we feel need, we can all agree on. So it's not just the two people deciding, maybe we can determine that at a meeting before the committee is formed and then let them get to it.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion? You just go ahead and determine that the committee is you and, and
Well-
Ray, and that,
I just don't
because
want to
I don't want to
out
be
of
on the
order.
committee. I mean, does it have to be agendized that we create a committee?
That's my concern. This agenda item is discussion of outreach efforts. It's not the creation of subcommittee. So I'd be.
It's a committee for an outreach project. And it just, these two people want to go forward with creating a video. And so the next meeting, let's go ahead and.
How about we characterize as this? You have Chair Graham and Member Turner going to talk about this issue. We're not creating a subcommittee.
Okay.
And you're going to report back at the next meeting. Sure. That is appropriate for this agenda.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Okay, all right, that's what we'll do, and then we'll just report back. We'll report back on that item, okay. All right,
There is one other thing on that has come up in the past, and this business of an article in the newspaper, and Susan has said that any articles should focus on historic buildings or properties rather than general history. I still would like to try to work on that. I've been mulling that over in my head for, well, a month, I guess. It's been since the last meeting, because I think that there's a way that you can talk about a building and discuss the historic context of that building relative to who lived in it, what happened there, what went on, what was going on, but relate it to a specific building. As an example, I'll give you just one off the top of my head that I thought of. The little house at 603 Avenue B, okay? Specific building. The thing of note that happened there was that the very first newspaper that was ever published in Boulder City took place in that house by two people, two women that put that together. And it eventually evolved into the Boulder City newspaper that exists now. So that's an example of a specific building that has a story that relates to sort of general history of the, and I'm asking you, Susan, I mean, does that sort of thing fall within the purview of this kind of an idea of a little story in the newspaper?
I would say yes, if you can relate it to a building or a property, as opposed to this happened 50 years ago this week kind of thing.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Then yes, but I guess to reiterate what kind of the point of when the committee first brought up this topic a long time ago, and keeps asking it to be put on the agenda is, it's on the agenda so you can discuss it, but if you don't have anything new to contribute, there's no reason to have it on the agenda. So basically, answer your question, yes. So basically, anytime you want to draft up an article, then just get it to me, like at least 10 days in advance of the meeting, and then I'll add that to the packet.
yeah,
So the
that's fair.
committee that can,
Yeah,
then
sure.
can review your draft article and provide comments or edits to it
Right.
before we could send it to the newspaper with a request for them to publish.
All right. No, well, that's fine. I just want to move that along if we can. I mean, I'm not thinking of, in fact, I need to go talk to the newspaper and see what sort of parameters they would look for some short little article on some specific item. I know they keep asking for an editorial, somebody to write an editorial. So anyway, yeah, that's fine, Susan. So we can take this off this agenda.
Well, no, we don't have to take it off the agenda. I'm saying that whenever you're ready to bring an article ready for the committee to review, just get it to me at least 10 days in advance. It'll be on the agenda. Now, aside from that, the group just had quite a bit of conversation about potential videos, so this will be on next month's agenda, I presume, because Ray and Linda are gonna come back to the committee with their proposal or idea or suggestions for those videos.
And I won't be here I'll be in Arkansas.
Okay,
So it'll be 2 months before.
okay, well, thanks for letting us know.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Excuse me.
Oh, I have been writing an article, it's not completed yet, but it's gonna be about the Browder building. But you did mention one time that it had to be, any articles that we did had to be about historical buildings that the city owned, or can it be just any kind of history? I was gonna put an article, I've started an article.
Right,
Okay,
if it's an article about the history of a building or property,
okay.
that's within,
The
the
scope of
purview, the
this.
scope of this
Okay.
committee.
All right,
But-
good. Well, I've got one started. I haven't completed it yet. I did some research on it and I'm formulating it now.
And I also presume that if I write an article and send it to the newspaper, it doesn't have to be approved by the Historic Preservation Committee or anybody else. I mean,
Yeah.
I can write an article.
Anybody as an individual can do that. It's
Right,
only if you're representing yourself as a
As a
committee member,
Right.
That's
then.
the difference.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
Charlie Hans does it, he can just do it. And
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
That's
All
the
right.
difference. Okay.
Can his byline say Charlie Hans, member of the Historic Preservation Committee? I mean, it's just,
Unless it's been approved by the city, right?
no, that's what my question is.
I guess we can check with the city attorney. When you're representing, you're with a certain committee, then it's inferred that you're speaking on behalf of the committee.
Okay.
But certainly, any one of you could write an article and submit that.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
promotes history and it doesn't have to come through the committee for approval.
All right.
So if the city submits an article, do they pay for it? Or is there a charge? Does the paper charge? We
Generally just simply forward them a press release or a request for them to publish, we don't make demands. I mean, if we're paying for an ad, we'll do that, but otherwise, for instance, the annual notices to the public about nominations, being available to make for the annual award, we just simply forward that information and request that they publish it, and they usually accommodate that, because it's considered news.
Right, okay. I was just wondering if you submit it yourself, do you have to pay for it? I don't know.
Right, if I submitted an article to the paper and they accepted it as they have a comment section, but I would pay for it if I wanted it published, I guess.
They might also just take it as an article of general interest and slip it into a spot, they're gonna put something in here and then they decide not to. And
Right, exactly.
They gotta fill a blank, say, hey, we've got this letter from Charlie, it'll fit right in here, let's go ahead and publish that or something, just as a matter of general interest.
Right.
You know, they might have it, you know, you might submit it this week, but they might not publish it for, 3 or 4 weeks
Right,
because
yeah.
There's
you
an
know, kind of space available, you know.
Yeah.
I probably just talk to them and work with them, and they probably slip it in when they have an opportunity.
I think it would be real interesting to really, to hear about that. I mean, something that no normal person wouldn't know.
That's what we do on the tour.
Yeah, I think it's great. Okay, any other comments? All right.
I guess I could also comment relative to that 10-day deadline. The 10-day deadline is so that it can be in the packet for everybody to see with the packet, including the public. On the other hand, if you're working on something and you don't get it finished till the day before the meeting or the day of, you can bring something here, just give us time to copy it, place it on your dais, and then it'll have to be scanned and added to the record afterwards. So it's not impossible to do something, sooner than the meeting. We just need time to copy it and take care of it. But if you can get it to us at least 10 days in advance, it'll be in the packet and all taken care of.
Okay. All right, very good. Thank you. All right, then we'll move on. Unless there's any other comments. Okay. Okay, for possible action, discussion and an update on the status of properties in the historic district or other potentially eligible properties. Any comments?
I have a question about the permit that was given for 524 Nevada. If they didn't get RDA funding, why was a permit granted?
Oh, well, they chose the permit was ready for issuance in terms of it complying with all requirements of the building, planning, and fire departments and public works. The applicant doesn't have to obtain it because it costs a lot of money to pull a permit, but they chose to pull a permit. They can go ahead and work on whatever they want to, but they have been made aware that if they do any work on any of the eligible items prior to the council deciding whether or not to, award that grant, they know that they are not eligible for reimbursement if they proceed with that work in advance of that. But they can proceed with other work, or if they choose to proceed on those eligible items before council approval, they're doing so at their own risk of not being funded for that. Because that has been a rule in place since the very beginning of the RDA program, is that if you want reimbursement through the grant, you can't start work until after the council approves the grant.
So approval or not of the RDA grant does not prevent somebody from moving forward with a project?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. All right. For possible action, committee discussion regarding potential agenda items for upcoming Historic Preservation Committee meetings.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Claire.
Can you explain this? I thought it was supposed to be handicap accessible. Because this is one of the 401 California.
This is phase one. And so they have opened up that wider for ADA accessibility. What's going to happen is an additional wall will be put in place separating the entrance from this room, which will allow people to go down a hall, access to the rest of the building. So this wall will not change. There will be a wing wall put in there, so that will allow for ADA accessibility without interrupting meetings
That's a good idea.
in the chambers.
So the wall will follow where this wall is, or
This wall is going to stay.
stay, right?
Yep,
That short wall there, that's just temporary wall.
Correct.
They're gonna knock a hole in it.
yep, that will become the new hallway.
Oh, the hallway will be over there, not over here.
They'll just put a door in this.
Got it, okay. Thank you. Sorry, now you can go to agenda 6.
Okay, all right. For possible action, committee discussion regarding potential agenda items for upcoming Historic Preservation Committee meetings. Okay, I think we discussed that a little bit already. Any other comments? Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to call for an agenda item for us to discuss nominations, identifying nominations to the National Register of the individually eligible buildings in Boulder City. How many of them we choose to nominate, I don't know what might be appropriate, or, do we start with one, do we start with two, or identifying the ones that we want to get nominated, and then find out from Ms. Mooney, I guess, what type of, how much work that's going to be, and whether that's going to be something the council would approve funding for if necessary, or, so I'd like to get that discussion going and get this low-hanging fruit that we have onto the National Register.
Okay.
So, who, you got a favorite building you think needs to be on there? Let's identify what our priorities are, I think. So that's an agenda item I wanted to call for.
Okay.
Discuss that specific
So what do we,
National Register nominations.
So you don't want to discuss that as part of the committee's overall, of all of your goals? That
Yes,
are
certainly,
gonna
but
have-
I'd like us
yeah.
to start working on, I come to our next meeting ready to identify and discuss which buildings we would like to start with.
So,
I guess the only thing that's,
Individually eligible ones.
yeah, the only thing that's going to be important with the overall goals and priorities is first seeing how it ties into the just recently adopted Historic Preservation Plan last night, and then how it ties into the resources that are available. Your direction on priorities, then I'm able to work with the consultant and say, okay, here's the committee's priorities, how much will it cost? And they can come back to you and say, here is the priorities we're able to do with the resources we have right now. If they exceed the resources available to us, then that would require going back to the city council for a budget amendment for additional.
Exactly.
So I think it would be helpful to have that in the context of the overall goals, so that we know what items we need to be focused on first and foremost, because that's your highest priorities.
Okay, so at our next meeting, we can go ahead and identify those properties that we could agree.
Well,
Or will
that
be our
would be
priority.
that would be a task with a resource component. And then once you tell me if the committee decides that's your number one priority, then I will go and find out how much it will take in terms of time and resources to make it happen.
Okay, great, thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I think maybe the way to reframe it is to keep in the back of our minds that is, I think that's one of the primary goals in the Historic Preservation Plan, as far as nominating properties to the local, state, or national register, and just keep that in mind, which properties, like you're suggesting, should be
number one, number two, number
prioritized.
three.
So it's, I'll call it homework. Not necessarily for whatever we get to that point of determining which properties to nominate to the National Register. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, then I think we're pretty much through, and we will go on to public comment and open it up again. Each person has up to 5 minutes to speak at the discretion of the chair. Comments made during the public comment period of the agenda may be on any subject. All remarks shall be addressed to the Historic Preservation Committee as a whole, not to any individual member of the Historic Preservation Committee, of the audience, or of the city staff. Okay, and if you would like to call in, you can call 702-589-9629.
Where's Judy?
Yeah.
I was counting on her. How long do we wait?
Well, okay, hearing no public comment at this time, this meeting is adjourned.
All right, good job.
All right. Thank you all.